Good morning and welcome to Talking Point on this Monday, the 21st of March. I am Sean Michael Small, and don't worry, folks, because joining me this morning, I am not alone, and I do not have to have anyone else to fill in for the shoes of my co-host, the great Mr. Keaton Shaw. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to all of you. It's great to be back in this seat. First of all, let me thank Sean for really holding down the fort whilst I was away. Sean, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Well done and congratulations. I know you also filled in many roles whilst I was absent.
Yes, please don't do that again.
Yeah, but
don't ever do that again.
But when all is said and done, you cannot take this seat away from me, my friend. Unfortunately, you can't. You just can't. But nevertheless, I'm grateful.
I don't want that seat.
We all want this seat. Anyway,
no, I don't want that seat. I prefer this seat.
Well, you can have that seat.
There's a lot of reasons why, which I cannot get into why I prefer this seat. A lot of behind the scenes stuff.
Please do not reveal those reasons right now. But folks, I'm very happy to be back. A lot took place during my absence. I'm well, I'm fine, and let me reassure you, everything was negative for COVID-19, so we're all good. But in relation to that, I really missed the platform and the conversation, especially from the announcement last week, Wednesday.
Something small happened, Keaton, while you were away. It might not be important. I'm not sure if it warrants, bringing it back up again, except, another chapter of that story made the news on Sunday. However, a minor, very infinitesimal thing happened on Wednesday. I was somewhat proven right.
You were proven right? How so?
Well, not really. Although I would like to think so. Because a lot of people say, fire this cabinet minister and fire that cabinet minister. Well, the one that bothered me the most is one of the people. I mean, he was demoted. He wasn't removed. And that's fine, because I didn't necessarily say that he needs to be out of public service, just not in that role. However, we don't necessarily have the reasons as to why. So I'm not necessarily saying I am vindicated, I was right, or whatever. But I found it was interesting that the lack of communication once again has reared its ugly head. And now, a couple days later, yesterday, something else came up. And it could maybe shed some light, although I'm not entirely too sure. The timing of what happened last week causes a lot of questions to be asked.
I think it was perfect timing on the Prime Minister's part. I think it was a rather brilliant political move. In any cabinet reshuffle, you're never going to hear about the exact reason as to why that reshuffle is taking place, why we're moving a minister from their portfolio, shifting into another. And what's interesting is that they had to bring in another individual. They didn't promote any senator. For example, you've now moved this gentleman who was in local government before, Kazim Hussain, to the Ministry of Agriculture. But you brought in Reginald Moore. But you didn't promote the junior Minister of Agriculture, who has been there for years with the People's National Movement.
Right.
That is Mr. Singh. He's been there for how many years now, and they didn't even promote him. He's a senator.
Mr. Singh is a senator?
Yeah, he's a senator.
From what?
He went up for the People's National Movement in Shogunas West.
Okay.
And he didn't get that seat. But adding to that...
Well, just on that, I don't know. This is something that I read from an analyst. The thought was that by shifting Mr. Hussain into agriculture, it's a way to hopefully shore up San Fernando, because you're effectively demoting the whole of San Fernando West.
San Fernando West, yeah.
San Fernando West, Faris Owari.
But let's focus on a couple other things, because I've been thinking about this. I thought it was brilliant, considering not only was it a great distraction, but politically as well, it solidifies Keith Rowley's position within the party, because there are a couple of things you have to bear in mind. First of all, there were many controversies surrounding Faris Owari as a Attorney General.
Yes.
His popularity, unfortunately, for the best part, based off of just public rhetoric, has declined. And I didn't even realize to the extent it declined, because when he first came into the limelight back in 2015, he was a rather popular figure. Even throughout that period, it seems as though he was quite popular. And you could even make the argument that he was the Prime Minister's right-hand man.
I wouldn't go so far.
That shifted a lot now to who we refer to as the Minister of Everything, Stuart Young.
First of all, Minister Young, it did not take very long for him to Minister of Everything, in part because after the initial year, because a lot of ministers were vocal and cabinet members were vocal, parliamentarians, Minister of Works and Transport, Minister of Tourism, you could go on and on. Everybody spoke about everything and reporters wanted to get quotes about everything. Remember, the ferry was a major issue there, so Works and Transport as well as Finance was speaking about that. And little by little, what happened was, outside of Stuart Young, the Prime Minister did not start off speaking much. He kind of rocked back and let everybody else speak. And little by little, enough people put their foot in their mouths where the only people that would speak on a regular basis were the Prime Minister somewhat, and then he himself had a couple of big gaffes on the public stage, and Stuart Young, who was the Minister of Communications, then took the portfolio of national security and juggled those two roles for quite some time. So Faris Al-Wari's importance to the administration, he's AG, I get it, but I feel as though whatever highs he had from the very start was chipping away.
Right.
Chipping away at a very steady.
It was chipping away.
Steady base.
It was declining.
But not on a slow pace, I think.
That was not only, as I said, that was not, it seems as though that only wasn't within the party, that was within the public as well, public rhetoric as well. So that's one thing to bear in mind, because you're now taking the AG out of that position, bringing in another individual, whom, yes, he's a senior counsel, and according to his CV, he has a fantastic portfolio behind him.
I would imagine his proficiency, at the very least, is significantly higher than Faris Al-Wari.
Well, again, we're speculating, we're assuming. But another thing to think about is, and the reason why I said it was brilliant timing, nobody was expecting it, due to all the other things that were happening within the public domain. For example, the Paria Fuel Trading Company accident. That was one major thing. And then the Prime Minister's admittance that he was the individual who met with the former Police Services Commission Chairman Bliss C. Prasad at President's House. I'll tell you what the Prime Minister did. He tried to create a distraction, and he removed Faris Al-Wari and demoted him to local government. And I thought, hold on a second, there's something more to this. And then I realized, not only is there local government elections later on this year, which perhaps I don't know if putting the AG as Minister of Local Government will impact upon that in any way whatsoever, because it's clearly a demotion. But to me, what we also have to examine is that you have the PNM internal elections taking place later this year. And I think that we've forgotten that because, again, yes, the popularity of Faris Al-Wari seems to have declined publicly, and we're only assuming within the party as well. But there was always the thought, there was always the assumption that the former Attorney General, now Minister of Local Government, wanted leadership of the PNM. He wanted that position.
Yes, but he is one of 7 or 8 people?
At least 7 or 8 people whom we heard from the grapevine, right?
Yeah.
Who we heard, right? But it seems as though just by how he was carrying himself in public and what he was pushing and the individual he was becoming, he really wanted that position. And I think the Prime Minister has now not only sent a message saying, listen, I'm not afraid to make these decisions. I'm not afraid to put people in their place. At the same time, he's also strengthened his position, stating that, you see what the former AG has done? We've had to discipline him. He's unfit for this role, unfit for this position, and he's actually now, in a sense, and I think people have forgotten this, he's actually now, in a sense, removed probably one of his challengers from running for leadership of the PNM.
Yeah, but to me, and Karen and I discussed this at least once. I'm not sure if we discussed it on both days that she was here. I don't know if strategically this is as good as a move as you say it is. I think, I can't say that you're wrong with regards to why they decided to do what they did. I just don't think it's a good move. First of all, let's go back to the People's Partnership. Yes, a coalition government, so you have to judge it slightly differently. But Kamala's cabinet instability at some point was a bad sign. Now, this is not the same level, but you had an example of the previous administration. You don't want to even touch on that space, right? You want to keep yourself away from any sort of references that will link you to their cabinet instability and yours. You already had to fire Maloney McDonald 3 times?
Yeah.
3 times, right? But okay, that's one individual. It's obvious a case of politics over merit or maybe ethics. However, with
Is
that
it ethics
said,
in politics?
there you go. With that said, I think what you ended up with was not a failed distraction to the situation. Because here's the problem. PARIA is not a direct function of cabinet. Cabinet did not have direct responsibility of the safety protocols that might have been breached or whatever the decisions were that might have caused or the failure of maintenance or whatever the reason
Yet,
is.
who is the individual that came out and spoke on the part of PARIA?
Right. Now, so granted, Stuart Young kind of put himself up there. But people are complaining that the Prime Minister was not present at the situation. So it's a catch-22. He opens himself up into a situation that does not directly, I'm not saying it doesn't indirectly, doesn't directly fall into his sphere of immediate responsibility, right? But at the same time, people would criticize him if he didn't anyway. So I get that. My point is, it's not like PARIA is a failed legal notice. It's a failed piece of legislation. It's a controversy in Parliament or Cabinet or whatever. PARIA is something where it's not your fault necessarily, unless you were protecting somebody and there's systemic problems in there. It's not necessarily your fault. Your fault comes in with the response. And the response hasn't played out yet to say that it's been bad. So now you throw in something that is directly your fault as a distraction. That blows up to some extent. So you then cause another situation, right, that causes more scrutiny to be put with regards to the makeup of your cabinet. Because it wasn't just Faris alone. There was also Clarence Rambarat and the timing of his resignation, which I'm 50-50 on, to be honest, because the timing just looks bad. And honestly, I could see a world where, yes, everything that he said was true, but then why did they decide to make such a poor decision timing-wise to his resignation? Then there's the swap between Camille Robinson-Regis and
this is the third.
Penelope Bendel.
This is where I come into the third point, because again, bear in mind the PNM have brought in somebody. They didn't promote Avinash Singh to ministry. You could have left everything, and you could have left Avinash Singh as Minister of Agriculture, and somehow allowed Faris to remain as AG. But I also believe with the controversies, because I think whilst we're not trying to lose focus on PARIA, and that's something we have to honestly push, I think we are falling into that trap now in relation to, having that at focus and center in relation to this entire cabinet reshuffle. And I think what we have to bear in mind as well is, due to the innumerable controversies surrounding the Attorney General.
I don't even care about the controversies for the most part, except maybe this last one.
So due to all that surrounding the Attorney General, I think that this was pre-planned. And you're right about the timing about Clarence Rambarat. But then and again, when is the right timing for these things? There's no right or wrong timing. It seems peculiar, I get it, but there is no right or wrong timing for this.
The longer you had between when he made his statements on radio and his resignation being acknowledged and accepted would have helped. Now, the situation with the AG, I'm sorry, not just this last controversy, but the one with regards to
which one in particular?
Christian Chandler and Adrian Schoon, I think, also merits significant consideration with regards to his job performance. But primarily my issue with him was how he signed off on legislation which seemed to be less than robust.
Or perhaps you're trying to say less than necessary.
Well, I mean, just how he did the public health regulations, the state of emergency, etc. Those were two of the big ones, right? It's questionable if the closure of the borders would have held up, depending on which case they used for the lawsuit. From what I understand, potentially they used the wrong case or the wrong combination of case and arguments to challenge the closure of the borders and the essentially locking out of our citizens abroad for, a year, or give or take. But this last thing, though, at first I thought, because there is a report let me get the correct term before I bungle it up.
But while you're waiting on that, another thing that we have to bear in mind as well is that you also had another individual within the party who probably, again, I'm looking at all options here, who could have perhaps become AG, and that is Member of Parliament for Port of Spain East, Keith Scotland. I'm not saying he's a great candidate, but I'm saying you actually brought in somebody. Now, not only shifting the controversies away from Faris Harari, in my opinion, and I think looking at everything as well, remember, we're making assumptions. We can only do that based off of what we know and what we have in front of us. I actually think that there was something else that was going to come to light. I actually think that there was something else within the public. Yes, this was planned and perfect because you're now removing the AG from the limelight. Mm-hmm. Well, the former AG, my apologies, from the limelight, Faris Harari from the limelight. But I think that there was actually something else that was about to happen, something that came to light that was going to explode in the public, and we needed to move him out of there right away. The key part of it is, as I said, the demotion. You could have put him. You could have put him as Minister of National Security and moved Fitzgerald Hines to local government. I mean, that would have made more sense to me.
No, not really.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, when you add up everything,
well, so here's
rather confusing.
Here's the reason why that doesn't make sense. And I thought at first maybe this was why the Prime Minister moved on Wednesday, that why the timing had to happen. And once you're shuffling the cabinet, you don't want to do one minister today and then next week accept Senator Ramrat's resignation. That would be messy. It's better to do all in one day. So I figured, okay, maybe this is why his hand was forced, because it seems as though the former Attorney General had a disagreement with the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, Ian McIntyre, with regards to how Mr. McIntyre's department essentially does its job. And essentially...
That's in relation to drafting legislation.
Right. And essentially, Faris Harari was basically saying, listen to me. And the Chief Parliamentary Counsel was saying, no. I draft legislation based off of instructions from Cabinet, or, if necessary, from the Prime Minister. And the example given was, with regards to national security, basically he's saying, listen, that's not your ministry. Why am I going to listen to you alone for policy with regards to another minister's ministry? Maybe if it was Faris Harari's ministry, that would be different. But it was the Ministry of National Security. And essentially, Faris is saying, no. You listen to me. You don't need to go to Cabinet. Now, to be fair, Mr. Harari did include the Prime Minister in that correspondence. So it wasn't as though he was trying to do something behind the Prime Minister's back. However, it did make me think, what is he on? Why is he trying to make a power play with a subordinate?
Hold on, Sean, again, it's Mr. McIntyre's word against the AG's word.
So I don't know this department. So Mr. McIntyre is saying that the practice, the precedent set of how his office conducts their business is to work with regards to the minutes from cabinet meetings and maybe the Prime Minister, but not to necessarily just take direct instructions from the AG, because they draft legislation for all ministries. And he also pointed out that if it was the case of the Ministry of National Security needed legislation to be worked on, to be drafted, and so that they could work out the policies, there were lawyers in that ministry who could potentially do like the first draft where they could kind of figure out, get their bearings, but it wasn't necessarily suitable for his office. He also brought up a point where legislation was put forward to Parliament and had to be withdrawn because it was essentially not written properly.
I'm trying my very best not to get caught up too much into all of these things, because as I said, now that the AG is no longer there, we're going to this is one piece of the puzzle that we're going to hit.
Initially, I thought that this could have been the reason that triggered the timing of the cabinet reshuffle. But then it said that situation was going up till the day up till Wednesday was the last letter that Faris Harari sent out. And it makes me wonder, well, maybe this was not necessarily the reason, but this is a by-the-way thing that didn't have any bearing on the Prime Minister's decision.
As I said, in my opinion, three things. One, there's local government elections coming up later this year. I am not entirely sure if this particular ministry or the position that Faris holds, whether or not that will have any effect. I really don't think it will. But I think we've gotten too caught up in the distractions. I think that it's not only because of the controversy surrounding Faris Al-Rawi.
Well,
I think it's also something, again, I believe that there was something that was going to happen, something that was going to come out, and we have to shift focus of him. There's too much on him already. He's become a liability to the party.
The speculation is also that he wanted Gary. And he pushed, I mean, we know that he tried to help out Christian Chandler when the Coast Guard picked him up, right? And apparently he was pushing for Gary because they might have had their own deals, it is alleged, or arrangements, it is alleged.
But as I said, also I think we need to focus on this point particularly as well. The internal elections of the PNM are coming up. And
although I'm not sure,
I think
was Faris really Prime Minister Rowley's a big enough threat to make a good enough example out of?
We will never know the true. If we look at the topic up on screen, you and I will never ever truly know the true internal politics within the PNM.
Right.
We will never ever know the true internal politics within the UNC, although we could probably speculate on that as is. I mean, sometimes it's blatant within the public domain. But Faris Al-Rawi has become, and is perhaps still, a huge liability to the government, to cabinet, and by extension the PNM party. And the Prime Minister not only has positioned himself in terms of strengthening his position as leader, political leader of the PNM, but has also now made a statement saying, I am not afraid to make these bold moves.
Well, so with regards to local government, here's an interesting question. Why did he put Faris in local government?
I don't know.
No. But why move the Minister of Local Government to Agriculture and put Faris there? Why didn't he just put Faris to Agriculture? Here's an interesting thing. Is Faris' position the one that's given more precedence to? We could be reading this all wrong. Could he have put Faris there to bolster local government, or could he have? Faris is being demoted, and they didn't want to put him in agriculture because agriculture might have been the area where they might have looked to push policy in the future, and they didn't necessarily want to put a black sheep, so to speak, in the ministry that they want to push. So but that is pure speculation. Here's the other thing with regards to internal politics. They swapped planning and housing. Camille Robinson-Regis and Penelope Beckles. I read one analyst said he thinks it's an equal swap. I thought, and I've also read, and I have heard, that they think that Penelope Beckles was demoted with regards to being removed from housing and being put into planning. So
you have to bear in mind as well that Penelope Beckles went up against Keith Rowley back in 2014. No, not in 2014. My apologies. Back in 2010. After Patrick Manning lost and resigned as political leader, she went up against Keith Rowley for leadership.
Yes, and she went to exile.
She went away and whatnot, right? So that may also be another thing. Because I've had a couple conversations outside of this platform in which people still, at least the individuals who have spoken to, are still of the opinion that Penelope Beckles is a contender for leadership. So that is perhaps something to bear in mind as well.
I would argue that Penelope Beckles was a much more legitimate name for most people, and maybe I'm wrong, but for most people, as opposed to Faris Al-Rawi. I very much doubt, and we've had this discussion before, Faris Al-Rawi leading the PNM was very doubtful, and even if that happened, him winning a general election and becoming Prime Minister seemed to be very doubtful. Out of all of the potential candidates for Prime Minister, I guess, and maybe this is a bias, I don't see Faris being a good candidate. I think Penelope, at the very least, would be a reasonable candidate that quite a lot of people, myself included, could see as Prime Minister. And I don't necessarily have a great degree of confidence in her. She is more a candidate.
So what does that go back to?
She's more of a candidate where I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt because I don't have anything against her either. And I could see that she could be a decent candidate.
So what does that go back to? Again, it goes back to the internal elections within the PNM. All that you have to bear in mind. That's what I'm saying. Again, I think the timing on the part of the Prime Minister, I thought this was brilliant. People are saying, well, it was surprising. We didn't expect this. What was he thinking? People were saying, well, it's time to remove the AG and whatnot. I thought the timing was brilliant. I don't know if anybody else has this opinion.
I don't know if it really, because again, I don't think Paria needed that big of a distraction. So if you're saying this is the distract from...
Paria needed a huge distraction.
Yes, but who was being attacked first and foremost? The board of Paria, not necessarily the cabinet. So why am I going to run? And to be fair, Stuart Young did this. He did this when he ran cover for the board and shielded them from having to talk. But really and truly, why am I going to stick my neck out? Now, maybe, as I said before, there were systemic problems in Paria, and those are political appointees that cabinet protected. And then if something like that comes out, only then will I say, well, yes, now cabinet has a hand to play in this situation and should take some of the blame.
And finally, the last comment I will make in relation to this is, did the Prime Minister need another puppet in that particular ministry? The Prime Minister has admitted he's interfered within the Police Service Commission, said information cannot be, information is not anything to do with collusion or anything like that. How is information anything other than information? And you could make the argument for the greater part that Fitzgerald Hines, for example, my favorite minister, right, is a puppet. And you could even make the example that Terence Dial Singh is a puppet. And most of these ministers are puppets. And how much was Faris Al-Rawi a puppet? How much? Because yes, you used to hear him talk and he would take forever to explain things and whatnot. But did the Prime Minister need somebody else whom he could manipulate in what is perhaps the second most important office?
I don't think, and this is where I think the two parties differ. I think the PNM is a for better or worse, and there is better and worse. So this is not all praise. But to some extent it is. I think the PNM is a bit more democratic, and the individuals have a bit independence. The flip side, or they practice that. The flip side, of course, is when you step out of line. If you don't play the game successfully, you might be the nail standing up that gets hammered back down. So with regards to, you asked earlier, Keith Scotland, why wasn't he potentially a candidate for AG? Maybe they considered it. I think how he handled that same question with regards to police being able to shut down, go into private residences, how he handled that situation might have potentially been a black mark against him, because he didn't really advance the cause, and he didn't necessarily do himself any favors in that moment.
Well, folks...
and that could have been his play, being an aggressive political play to establish himself, that maybe backfired in his face.
Well, put it this way. At this point, I'm no longer surprised. But later on, I guess we will see what happens. Anyway, folks, listen. It's Monday morning. I'm glad to be back. And this was supposed to be Keaton's 2 minutes. 2 minutes in relation to what happened last week Wednesday. But as you know, here on Talking Point, there's so much to discuss, so much to analyze, that it's never going to take 2 minutes. We're going to take a break here now on the program. And when we return, well, there's a lot more to discuss. And we'll continue analyzing and debating the latest here in Trinidad and Tobago. Stay tuned to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. A bit of sad, unfortunate news to share with you this morning if you haven't heard so already. Police are now investigating the suspected suicide of a Princestown couple. Reports indicate that Steve Jagmohan, 40 years old, and his common-law wife, Charlene Ramke, soon 38, who were together for 10 years, hung themselves in their home. It is being speculated over financial stress and burdens of which they could no longer bear. The couple made a video in front of their daughter indicating what they were going to do. They made a second video, but according to police reports, none of the videos actually show them committing the act. Again, it's believed because they were experiencing financial woes. Now, the Commissioner of Police, McDonald Jacob, visited the scene and has offered counseling to the family and all relatives who would unfortunately have received such tragic news. I know that some individuals, and I'm expecting that some individuals will politicize this, Sean. But I extend my condolences to the family. But this is a topic that I'm very happy that our director and our on-site psychologist, part of the station, Sule Joseph, sought to address. Suicide.
Yes.
And I know your face got a bit twisted when I said I'm very happy, but I'm actually happy that they were very, forward in saying, no, we need to discuss this. Because over the course of the pandemic, and I don't think people really realize this, the prevalence of suicide, or the act of suicide, increased. And I'm not talking about only in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm talking about globally. A lot of teenage suicide, suicide within adolescents, but a lot more within adults. And not only are we seeing a growing population of those who are homeless or begging for assistance in Trinidad and Tobago, we're also seeing an increased amount, and at least the conversation of awareness in relation to mental health, that's being also churned out, because I think we've forgotten that. And this couple is one particular instance in which perhaps we're not sure the circumstances besides the fact that they were going through financial woes. And that in itself, Sean, I really hope this is not a story that is going to become common within the headlines or within the papers throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
So, for those who don't know, last week, every Thursday we have a show called Psyched by Sule Joseph, a practicing psychologist. And the week before, one of our station heads decided, there was no big story in the moment that he wanted to talk about suicide. He wanted Psych to have that episode. It wasn't planned. Fortunately, Sule was able to put it together within a week. And he had a talk with regards to somebody who had to go through those trials before COVID. So there already existed, of course, psychological pressures that would cause suicide before. And I'm sure those who read the papers every day, you would have seen murder suicides just because of domestic abuse situations and so on. With this pandemic, the reasons that were cited, the economic strain of the couple in question, with this pandemic, one of the key things that we have to remember is it's everywhere. So there's nobody that's doing great, that has excess money to throw around, that's going to come in and bail anybody else out. That's not a thing.
It's not like everyone has a safety blanket.
Right. And whatever safety blankets everybody had for themselves is being
depleted.
Even the US, there's questions with regards to their deficit spending with their pandemic relief. Now, why is the war in Ukraine troubling? Well, you're going to have a lot of refugees in Europe. And Europe is one of those countries that a lot of regions in the world depend to kind of help bail them out a little bit. It's a region of first world countries with strong economies, so we could potentially ask the EU for help, for financial help if we need it, from wherever part of the world we're from. Trinidad and Tobago is part of the Commonwealth, they have the French territories, etc., etc. Well, this situation is going to just take away a lot of Europe's attention and money, so there's one less safety net for the world of what was already depleted. So you say, I hope this is not going to continue further. Generally speaking, because of inflation as well, being driven now by this war, first by the pandemic, we're going to see this in TNT. And there's not a lot of people we could go to ask for help. We could take loans, but at some point, the world is going to have to stop taking loans because we just can't continue to borrow money. At some point, the people who are lending money are going to say, hey, I can't afford to lend any more money with no expectation of seeing it anytime soon.
I'd like to know...
Otherwise, we're going to drive inflation further.
Branch off on that topic in terms of taking loans. Now, branch into another topic. Again, condolences to the family on this tragic news and to the children who have lost their parents.
Everybody, we need to do a much better job now of keeping track of our friends and family and providing whatever minor support, no matter how small it is. That could be the difference, because a lot of people are going to be seeing this situation.
Goes back to Sean and I, our favorite topic, and that's communication, and it goes to communication amongst ourselves, between each other. I know many families out there have their issues and their problems, but again, please try our very best to communicate with each other. But what you said about taking loans, now, TSTT, the Telecommunications Services of Trinidad and Tobago, rejected articles which allege that 573 of its employees are going to be retrenched.
Right.
In a statement, TSTT indicated that on February 1st, it submitted a proposal to its representative majority unions and its management staff to restructure the company. The proposal was based on the global and local telecommunications industry. Then we heard news that 53 personnel from TSTT's security services, their police services, were retrenched. And it's alleged that a contract was given out to a private company for those services. Shifting now, TSTT has stated that it started the process to secure funding from international markets to cover severance costs for employees of the Beleaguered Telecoms company. A proposed restructuring exercise that will result in hundreds of retrenchments is still, and I quote from TSTT, in its formative stages, and no definitive number of employees have been impacted, as TSTT stated. I mean, one thing is to restructure the company. I mean, it's no secret that the majority of state-owned enterprises, utilities, these companies are bloated. It's another thing to state that, no, we're not going through with this process. We're denying that this is taking place. But then you're coming out and saying, okay, you know what? It is taking place. You know, we have put up a proposal with our management staff and the representative majority unions. We don't know any details of it, saying that it's in the formative stages, no. But they've now started the process to secure funding for severance. Does that story line up? I mean, you can make the argument, listen, TSTT is being proactive. But in terms of, again, TSTT's communication with the public and what they put out there, it doesn't line up or make sense, does it?
So, to me, and I can be wrong, I'm just shooting off the cuff here. When you are worried about things that are not the actual issue at hand, what is the issue at hand? How to fix TSTT. What are you worried about? The political fallout of fixing TSTT. You're not worried about fixing TSTT. You're worried about the political fallout. So you don't know how to communicate it. It's harder to be straightforward. It's harder to have a clear, defined goal and to have everything point towards that goal. That's what it seems like to me. Because really and truly, why are you going to retract a message that denies a news report? Like so soon. What was going on? Couldn't you have decided what you wanted to communicate and then communicated? Not, no, we're not doing that. Okay, but we are looking to finance severance. Like, come on. Come on. That is, and this is, to me, ultimately, that's just a small-time amateur move. It's not a big mistake. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to change the price of bread. Actually, it might, depending on how the economics are.
I mean, a lot of things don't change the price of flour. So.
Right, but you know, it probably is a minor error, but it's one of those minor errors that's like, come on, man. Come on. You cannot have people in those positions. We're not talking about somebody's rum shop here with whiffling. We're talking about a major public sector employer.
Well, hold on one second. My major talking point from this, telecommunication services, which again...
That can't communicate?
That can't communicate. My major talking point from this is the mere fact that we're looking to restructure the company because it's beleaguered, it's falling apart. We don't have the financial capacity. We don't have the financial capacity.
And in part...
But what are they doing? And this is the problem that I have. We need to secure funding for severances, but now we're taking international loans. And who is taking that loan? Is the company going to bear that loan? Is the corporate soul going to bear that loan? Is the government going to bear that? And that is, how are we going to repay that?
What happened with Petrotrin?
Don't get me started.
The refinery is tied up in the loans taken out for the severances for Petrotrin. Right? That's one of the reasons why the refinery is in the mess that it is in. Now, that had its good points and its bad points. The good points was, well, the government has somewhat removed itself from liability, at least somewhat, from the loan, although I'm not entirely sure if, you know, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure they want the loan to be paid back, and I don't think you could sell the refinery to pay off the loan. That essentially, I believe, was what the exercise of trying to get tender offers for the refinery was for, and basically everybody said, this refinery ain't worth enough for me to pay off these loans. Right. The question, of course, is if they're going to take financing, they will probably try to offer something as collateral, and what will that be? Now, we need to put in perspective, because of the pandemic. We even reached inflation from the war in Ukraine. Because of the pandemic, a lot of businesses have been in trouble. Not every business. I mean, there are some pharmacies that were not doing well because of the pandemic. It's not automatic, right? I think in part because everybody's worried about COVID, maybe some other health concerns fall by the wayside. And it's not as though vaccines were being sold privately from pharmacies, but that's just a small example. Let's not get caught up in that.
Right.
My point is, TSTT's troubles could be because of the pandemic. It could have been something that would have been avoided without the economic problems of the pandemic, but can't be. And other companies have taken loans off of their assets, industries, to stay afloat. particularly the airlines, they have taken loans using their miles program as collateral because that's actually the part of the business that's worth anything and not the airline itself.
Well, hear me out here.
Believe it or not, from what I understand, airlines take a minor loss on flights because their miles programs are worth so much.
Well, hear me out here in relation to TSTT. I'm not entirely sure how much of the pandemic would have affected TSTT. Right? People are making out, well, the pandemic affected everything. I think now the pandemic has become a great excuse for pre-existing conditions. You see, the thing is with TSTT has always had poor service. It's one thing that the company is bloated. It's one thing that the company is bloated with the amount of workers that they did. But they had poor services. I mean, the internet was horrible. Their phone service was unreliable. And let's be honest, you don't get signal in many areas with a company that falls under TSTT. That's one thing. Point I'm getting at is that when you had competitors now entering the market, right? TSTT before didn't have much competition. What was the biggest competition? Cable and wireless, which has Flu. That was it. But now you have about 3 or 4 other major...
No, before Digicel for phones,
right.
it was TSTT.
Right, exactly.
That was it.
And now you have 3 or 4 major competitors within the market. And TSTT simply can't handle that because
but
people are shifting.
As a phone carrier?
Yeah. TSTT can't handle that anymore. TSTT has so much competition. They have so much poor service. I mean, the one thing is the company being bloated, but they can't handle the market.
And herein lies my bigger problem with regards to, we can't privatize and all of these greedy corporations. That's nice. But name me the public entity that has operated with any reasonable amount. Doesn't have to be great amount. Doesn't have to be perfect amount. Any reasonable amount of efficiency. Right? At any point in time within the last 20, 25, 30 years, name me one. Caribbean Airlines have looked okay at times, but then as quickly as they look okay, they look horrible. So they had, and this is the successor to BWIA, right? This is not even the long-term legacy company that started out as the national carrier. TSTT, I don't know what to say because at the end of the day, it's not as though Digicel is in, well, they are in other markets, but it's not as though Digicel has had its problems too, to be fair. It had to downsize twice. And I think maybe this is the key point. Public sector entities are not free to, when necessary, just downsize. Just trim the fat when things aren't looking so hot.
I think my biggest issue with this is that, okay, we're restructuring the company, we want to make it more profitable. Not only do you have to improve your services as well, TSTT. I mean, you really, really need to improve your services to become a competitor within the market. And that does TSTT even have the majority market share now?
Why can't we privatize TSTT?
You answer that question to the unions, my friend.
No. I can understand for TNTech and WASA.
Do you mean like a public-private partnership?
I mean
fully privatized.
Why is the government owning a telecommunications company when it's not as though they need to do it? You see, they need to do certain things, but they don't need to do TSTT because other companies in the private sector exist.
I think it's becoming necessary, but I think my issue with this is we're now trying to secure international funding, which, let's be realistic, loans in order to pay off severances. I mean, how are we going to pay back? And who's going to... As you pointed out, what's going to be the collateral?
Unless...
And at the end of the day, who's going to pay this back?
International funding could mean capital investment, which means privatization.
Capital investment.
Well, let's put it this way. Petrotrin showed them, if we take a loan and then try to divest ourselves of the asset... Foreign investors might say no, but if we just sell the thing...
You asked me a question and in relation to why it says we can't just privatize TSTT. Let me ask you a question now. Has any government ever learned from the mistakes of the past? Has any government ever done anything differently?
To be fair.
And I'm glad you're going to be fair.
Have we ever seen a government say, we need to... Now, okay, we are Caribbean Airlines, but with Petrotrin was maybe a step beyond Caribbean Airlines, right?
Maybe.
And TSTT potentially...
BWIA into Caribbean Airlines.
Right, sorry. Was a step beyond BWIA, right. So we've had one example. I don't know if that's necessarily an example that would have answered all the questions and been a good guide of how to do it. So this government, for better or worse, because we elected them, has to oversee a period where we cannot afford the excesses of yesteryear. And that's what I believe again. I don't think they wanted to restructure Petrotrin. I think they had to. I don't think they want to have to make changes with regards to TSCT Port, TNTech, WASA. I think they have to.
But they never restructured Petrotrin, did they? We just got rid of Petrotrin at the end.
I mean, that is technically what restructuring means, Keaton.
Well,
the structure is different than what it was.
I suppose in terms of our local economics lingo, that probably is what it means. But
right.
Moving on
Let's put it this way. Restructuring is not, we keep everybody, which was the problem, and just rename the thing. No, that's not restructuring either.
Moving on now to another sign of the times. Now bear in mind, this was not unexpected, by the way. This was much more expected than we thought, because Unilever Trinidad and Tobago has indicated that it will cease all production within Trinidad and Tobago from July 31st. This is no news because it really comes from 2018, where the company sold off its assets to KKR Limited, its spreads. It already stopped manufacturing Breeze and other major products. It was really manufacturing its spreads, such as Blue Band, within Trinidad and Tobago. Now, over 119 workers are going to be on the breadline. The interesting part about it is that now that the company was very much making it public years ago, stating that this is what we intend to do, this is what we're going to do, the unions have been rather quiet on this. The unions have admitted, listen, yes, our workers are very anxious and are very nervous given the current job market, but the unions aren't protesting because they were known, it was made known years in advance that this is what they were going to do. Unilever will continue business in Trinidad and Tobago from a different model, be it in terms of, I suppose, importing, storing, and distributing. Whether or not that's going to be for the rest of the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, or just Trinidad and Tobago, that's yet to be seen. But that's Unilever. Going back to what the Minister of Trade and Industry stated, that is Paula Gopee-Scoon, she said we have a very strong manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't necessarily doubt that. I think what we also need to understand is that we have a very strong private sector in Trinidad and Tobago. But I think the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago is at a standstill. I don't think they're concerned with reinvesting their money and expanding. I think they're concerned with now having their money as is, sustaining our business, hopefully making a profit, and well, we'll see what happens. But to say that we have a strong manufacturing sector, make the argument that that may not necessarily be the case. But we certainly have a private sector that is there and that's willing, it's very strong, it's vibrant, but they cannot expand. I don't think they want to expand. I don't think they want to reinvest. So is it now that, again, we're blowing smoke?
The irony here is that one of the main private sector entities that does well is food and beverage.
Always.
Right? And we don't have a great agricultural or food production or food manufacturing. We have some, but probably not enough. Right? It comes down to economies of scale. Here's the trick, however. Here's the trick. So economies of scale meant that foreign chicken, foreign sugar, foreign whatever will be cheaper than local stuff. Right? That's why we import all of our food. Chicken is one of the few things, ironically, that we still manufacture locally to a significant degree. But foreign chicken,
we still import quite a bit of chicken.
We still import quite a bit of it, especially like leg and thighs, I believe, come in here. You get a box of leg and thighs really cheap from abroad because they basically wanted, breast and wing. 2019, they made this decision. That's fine. What happened in 2020, 2021? Cost of shipping containers went up. So while I understand that economies of scale says, let's try to centralize and our distribution, we don't need a factory. This factory is probably too small scale. It's probably not efficient enough. In 2019, the numbers made sense for us to centralize it in Latin America and just distribute to Trinidad. Now I have to bring that into question because the cost of shipping at times being more than the goods themselves. However, that said, they might have had to import the raw materials, so maybe the cost of shipping would have been there anyway.
Yeah, but Unilever, when it sailed back in 2018, they were contractually obligated to do this. This is why I said it wasn't unexpected. Yes,
right,
190 people, but part of one of the clauses
no, but
for that sale was...
as much as they're contractually obligated, at the end of the day, the economics of the situation has changed. So I do wonder if it makes sense economically or if this is just a stubborn business decision. However, with regards to the unions, it's real simple. This is not the government that they can't mamagadi public over to try and get a raise.
Anyway, put it this way. Have you ever heard of tonka bean?
I have no idea what that is.
You don't know what tonka bean is? Folks, we need to do some educating here on Talking Points. You know what vetiver grass is?
No.
Right, great. So folks, one of these days here on Talking Point, hopefully sometime this week, we're going to speak about tonka bean and vetiver, and we're going to take a look at how they're used around the world. For example, tonka bean is used in making perfumes around the world.
Okay.
Yeah, and vetiver is also used for medicinal purposes. Those are two things that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago that we could utilize not only to have a great market, but export as well. I am going to educate the public and show them why we could do this.
That we don't know about, that we could potentially, with even more established things, like I go back to chocolate.
Listen, I'm more so going to do it because you don't know what tonka bean is.
Yeah, but honestly, I think chocolate might be the thing that we should hang our hats on.
Anyway,
world-class chocolate, people. World-class chocolate.
Let's take a break here on Talking Point for news on the hour, and when we return, we open up the phone lines this morning. Stay tuned.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Boy. As we always say, if you could only hear what happens off cameras, boy, it's entertaining.
You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it.
Anyway, folks,
you don't want to hear it.
Let's open up the phone lines now. It's long overdue. 623-9376, 622-9338. I remember the numbers, and I remember the locations as well. Good morning, caller from Pitty Valley.
Good morning, Keaton. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
Keaton was not there, so permit me, Sean,
Go
to
ahead.
address Ms. Diego Martin on Friday program. She called in on defense of I saying the Thursday program with Ms. Lutchial. She calling to defend that I saying was a poor interview.
Mm-hmm.
Here was her defense. She said that it was not the partnership, it was not a UNC government, it was a partnership government reshuffle. Who was the prime minister of the partnership government? One. On the UNC on the whole as a government by themselves, they themselves reshuffle.
Mm-hmm.
That's two. She went on to contradict herself and said all governments reshuffle. Then, sadly, unfortunately, she went on to say the guest that you all have, the lady from Sandy Grande, I forget her name, and
Alderman Daniel Piper
from Grande, who you all have on the show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She went on to show her bias and said when you all interviewing her, the interview is poor, and she's turned off her TV. Right, Sean? Here my thing this morning. My complaint on the interview was just this, Sean. I am not telling you to badger a guest or to be disrespectful to a guest. All I'm saying is sometimes when a guest says something, it raises a red flag. And all you could say is, excuse me, did the UNC or the partnership government ever reshuffle? Or here, this next example. When the guy did come on the station and said, COVID give AIDS. All being respectful, you could have just said, excuse me, sir, where you get your information that COVID give AIDS?
He did.
That's all I'm asking you, Sean. And I'm not asking you to badger guess.
Right, but caller, so let's take the second example. I do believe we did ask him about his sources. And
No,
we didn't.
I called in.
Yeah, we didn't.
We all said nothing.
Speaking of Mr. Umar Abdullah, when we interviewed him,
I'm pretty sure he said some of his sources.
We were absolutely shocked. We were shocked ourselves here in the station.
Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure.
But caller from Pitty Valley,
Why you don't ask the guy? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, but caller, listen, I understand your point. Every caller has their opinion, and even though she called in to probably comment on your comments, no hard feelings. Everybody has their opinions. We understand what you're stating, and we will bear that in mind.
I would just like, I'm not looking for no thing. I just call in to say
Definitely.
But one thing, caller, again though, one thing that she did say that I believe is fair is the fact that it was a coalition. So it's, I'm not saying it's not, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's not an excuse. I'm just saying these situations are different.
All right. Well, then the UN
They're different.
and when they own a government, they're reshuffle.
Right.
Caller from Batival, look, thank you very much for your contribution on your call.
And I did bring it up. I did bring it up before I had the conversation with Senator that the UNC are being somewhat hypocritical with that approach.
We have a call on the line from Digomasi. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
From Tobago, sir.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry, Tobago.
Now, tell me something. Is reshuffling a bad thing?
No, it's not.
Depends.
I don't see it as a bad thing.
Our problem is that we never get reasons for reshuffling. So they are not
that is the problem.
Transparent in what they do. So we have to always be suggesting. Very soon, we'll have a lot of mind readers in Trinidad and Tobago. Some time ago, I called in and asked about gender equality. And I asked about this LGBT. Surprisingly, this weekend, I saw where a guy at 21 decided that he is going to be a woman. And he was allowed to compete in a swimming contest with women. And when you remember the athlete by the name of Caster Semenya?
Yes, South African sprinter.
Who was born a woman and was prevented from competing in women events?
I believe she was born.
No, she
hermaphrodite.
She had a
no, she's not a man. She's born a woman, and because she high levels,
she had high testosterone levels.
They wanted to put her on drugs, and she decided nah, and they banned she.
Yeah, I recall that.
All events.
She is an intersex woman, assigned female at birth.
Yeah, she had high testosterone levels. But
yes, so that is the kind of bias we're dealing in the world with.
I think
thank you, caller. The problem though is, remember, the jurisdictions that govern, I believe, the different, because she was banned from the Olympics, was it?
She was banned from competing on the whole.
From track and field.
Yeah.
So swimming would have a different body to track and field. If it wasn't the Olympics, then it was whichever was the international body that monitors that. So yes, it's sports, but you don't necessarily want to lump all sports together.
We have a call on the line from Shagonas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, Professor.
If we listen or we read the accusations made against Faris Al-Rawari, it clearly indicates he knows nothing about proper government. And to put him in our next ministry, I don't understand the logic.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Government get out. I made a point, of course, the worst of all was the Minister of Finance, and nobody touches him. What I was most amazed of is this morning, reading the Minister of Agriculture position on the office of the Commissioner of State Land. What you don't realize is the Commissioner of State Land office was designed just to do that. Because it was an estate management position, and they put a land surveyor in it, who never did her work, and was promoted. And what he also forget is we end up with the worst commissioner of police because of that same thing. When he was the big man in Cavalry Limited, he allowed people to squat on the land, and when a policeman applied for a parcel of land, a fellow they call Dulal Chan, and he got it, he followed the law, that was used against him in the interview. Any questions or you doubt anything?
The minister you're speaking about is the former or outgoing Minister of Agriculture, correct?
Yes, he was the secretary to County Limited before he came in here. And their duty was to protect County Limited lands. He let people squat on it. And when Dural Chan applied for it, all this is in public domain.
Yeah.
Right? That was used against Dural Chan, who did nothing wrong. And then we ended up with Gary Gifford. I don't want to go through his many years. I did that already. Okay, so any further clarification?
No, I'm not. I have to get more information and brief myself in relation to the story that
you get more information for a long while.
Yeah, so I have to get more information in relation to the comments.
This might be something we'll want to discuss in the future.
Minister of Agriculture, so I can't really comment too much on what you're stating now, but I take your word for
That's
it.
in the public domain. If you check it out.
I'll definitely look it up. It's quite interesting what you're stating, so I'll definitely look it up and hopefully we can comment on it on another edition of the program.
I'm not usually interested.
You can't win, Keaton. Give it up. You can't win.
Professor, all I can say is it's good to have you back. It's good to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's not him who is returned, it's you who's returned.
It's good to hear from you again. I corrected my initial statement. Good to hear from you again, Professor.
Oh, well, I had to go to the doctor on Friday, so I had to miss you.
We hope all is well. Take care. 623-9376, 622-9338. Call in and join us on Talking Point this morning. Have your say. Let's hear your opinion on the latest happenings here in Trinidad and Tobago. Just to give you some news, 5 prisoners have escaped from the Golden Grove prison in Aruca. It happened around 10:30 last night. 1 was recaptured. A manhunt is underway for the other 4 individuals. I'll give you that details just in a bit. But we do have another caller on the line with us. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Shah, and welcome back. And good morning, Mr. Small.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to talk again about the police service. And in order to assist and facilitate this country to get better, we have to have a functional, non-partisan police service. Because from time that Mr. Mayor ran out of office, the time that Solomon Pat took his son out of the police service, it has been tarnished, and they have been effectively using the police service, the political parties, for their means. All right. The other thing I want to latch on to, you see the Clico fiasco? We have hit it. We spent $90 million on a Coleman Commission and inquiry. And we have a prime minister, wittingly or unwittingly, passed it on to a DPP, who, since signing of a memorial, saying investigating, there are people in that report is culpable for what happened at Clico. And we must allow them to clear the name or pay the consequential problem they have caused themselves. Now, Karen wants to clear her name because they implicated her in that. But there are people on both sides, high up the present political party. I believe they are avoiding prosecution, criminal. Coleman said there were criminal evidence to prosecute. And I'm going to say this again. Where is the DPP? Is he boisterous enough? Is he strong enough? Is he being railroaded by the executive of not getting enough resources to investigate and prosecute? We don't want the pariah issue to be another Clico affair, to put it in the toilet and somebody sit on it. We as a country and as citizens must put this at the forefront of all our arguments. Get the Clico. Let us start somewhere. Because one political party does the investigation and the other one hides it. And they say it's too expensive. And I could call Las Alturas, Clico. Just like that, one political party put recommendations that basically come out of commission and inquiry.
All right, caller, we have another caller on the line.
And
so.
another party mash it up.
Yeah.
Procurement legislation. Go on and have a nice morning.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, caller. Very good point. Good morning, caller from San Fernando.
Morning, gentlemen. How are you all doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well. How are you?
All right, fine. I just want
Excellent.
to make a point here concerning state enterprises and privatization. Now, I work private all my life, right? And I ended up the career working multinational. But there are things in private sector and multinationals, when you work for them, you can't get away like in the public sector. You can't go for 3 hours lunch and close the cash on people and all kind of thing when you're doing private sector and all that, right? You look at every public sector company, PTSC, Caribbean Airlines, all these things, failures, and they just make room for corruption and kickbacks and all kind of things. OASA is one key, and all of these, everything that the government handled over the years, from the Gene Miles era with the gas station racket to the Carnegie Savannah racetrack, come down the line, and everything the government got the finger in is for somebody to get a kickback and a cutback. The second point I want to make before I go, because I know it's time, I want you all to understand, if you look around the world this morning and you see uprisings and protests, especially in Latin America, South American countries, you will see the main reason is because of government corruption. And this will continue until we start to lock up people and we start to execute the right kind of judgments that are required. The former caller, right, the DPP like he going to sleep. And I want to let you know that this country reaching a tipping point where the innocent and the people who are not getting justice and the people who are not, and justice just dragging on for years and years, it will reach a certain point and then all hell is going to break loose. Somebody just said just on the program that we created a star mind readers. You know why? Because the public have to speculate. There are no forthcoming answers to the situation. The blackout take place, no answer. The drivers die, no answer. This has been a continual problem down the road. And it is just a matter of time until people start taking matters in their own hands. Condolences to the family that lost that couple up in Princess Town there.
Yes.
We empathize and we sympathize and our praise be. And good morning, gentlemen. Have a good day.
You too, caller. Thank you very much. Sean, educate me, please. It seems as though I'm not knowing of this. Are public officials, government officials, members of the cabinet or a political party immune from the law?
Well, no, but, and this goes back to the caller before with regards to the police. Well, one of the reasons why you don't necessarily care to have the police being too clean is if they're too clean and too good, they will start to look into things that might bother you. So you're not necessarily too worried that they're not too clean, too efficient. But really and truly, a lot of it comes down to similar to what he said. When you have bad employees that are allowed to get away with things in other aspects of the public sector, why do we assume that the police service is going to be immune to some of these things? Not necessarily all, but some of these things, if they're going to have the same protections, difficult to fire them, etc., etc. Depending on the discipline that's enforced in the public sector, that's going to spill over into the police service as well.
We have a call on the line from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Sean and Small.
Morning.
Yeah, nice to see you about Small. I mean, Sean.
Morning, caller, morning. You're live.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the echo.
The guy there that call and shout out our system is causing this country to want to erupt because they don't want to do what is right. And you all have a platform there. You all need to educate the people on the facts. We had to start dealing with facts. We had to go into deep diving and deal with the facts so that we could come out here and help people to clear their mind, because there's a lot of stupidness going on with the government, the opposition, and all these people. They're not making sense. And in order to do that, we need to bring the people together instead of making it a scene that we wouldn't be able to handle in time to come. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because people is going to come and unite, and a big fire is going to start. Right? So, only do all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll try to.
So what he just said there, people need to unite, and I think he and the last caller are basically implying, well, they'll unite when they get fed up and resort to violence. And maybe this is why, because you bring it up all the time with politicians keeping us divided, particularly with regards to race, but other things as well.
So now I'm wondering if we're relying on politicians or political figures, be it a mother or
once
uncle.
We're divided, right? Exactly.
Are we relying on them to unite the people?
So that once we're divided, we will never rise up against them. But more importantly, and this is what I will never understand. Who could tell me that government X or Y has been great and efficient, but more importantly, public service has been great and efficient? It hasn't been, right? And yet we want the government to solve all of our problems as though they are perfect when we all complain that they are not. But it comes back down to, with regards to corruption, we can't afford it anymore. I've said this before, and I agree with them. We have all of these problems. And the main tipping point now, as compared to 5 years ago, is we can't afford it anymore. We cannot afford because it's systemic across multiple entities.
Imagine that it's boiled down to imagine, and your quote is very pertinent, and I hope people understand what Sean is saying. Imagine it's boiled down to that, though, that we can simply no longer afford corruption.
It takes a global pandemic followed on by an invasion in Europe for us to realize, hey, we can't afford the corruption we have. I mean, PTSD. Like what entity could we say we are confident there is reasonably no corruption? Not even perfectly no corruption, just reasonably little to no corruption. What public sector entity could we even say that for?
Listen, it is not time for Friday trivia as yet. Stop asking me these very difficult questions. You're putting me on the spot. Our final call for this morning. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Oh, hi guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Lovely to see you looking so chic and healthy, Keaton. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Solo Sean was amazing, but what's a good yang without a yin, right? A yin. So, I just wanted to refresh that there's a recombinant now called Deltacron. It's kind of a hybrid, and only a couple dozens of people have been tested worldwide. So far, it's not been felt that it's much worse. But Dr. Ramlachan would still like to remind us that we are still in a pandemic. We're not yet endemic. Only around 50% have been vaccinated, 10% boosted. And WHO would actually like the world to be vaccinated, say 70% by July. So we don't know if that's going to happen. To date, there's been over 471 million cases of COVID, in case anyone was counting. 6 million deaths and 11 billion doses have been given. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, caller. Good hearing from you, as always.
Yes, Hong Kong, I think chiefly. I was a bit stunned that they were going through the whole thing of the hospitals being swarmed within the last month or so, and they have now surpassed us in deaths, whereas they were well below us before this current wave. I believe they're now at 4,600 plus deaths, 960,000 cases.
I was actually rather surprised that our health team, our COVID-19 health team, seemed to be rather surprised that there was a spike after the carnival event.
No, but I think though it was a bit of an anomaly, because one day there was a surge of cases and then it went back down to some extent.
Like I said, I was a bit surprised, but nevertheless, we have to continue to open up and move on.
I think, like I said, I think the surprise was we had a blip, and maybe fortunately it remained as a blip, and between our vaccination levels and natural immunity levels, COVID for now seems to be, I'm not a doctor, this is not a definite statement of fact, seems to be relatively under control. But people are still dying. So please don't be complacent.
Well, just to give you some quick information, one of those prisoners who escaped was recaptured. Kevin Jagger was recaptured in Dinsley last night. The remaining escapees are Kareem Douglas, also known as Akeem Douglas, Shaquille Drayton, also known as Jabari Williams, Anthony C. Prasad, Tion Thomas. The TTPS is advising that the manhunt is on, but is advising the public that the escapees are considered armed and dangerous and they should not approach them if seen. Call the TTPS immediately if you get through to them, that is. In relation to international news, very quickly, China Eastern Boeing 737-800 with 132 people on board crashed in the southern province of Guangxi this morning. There are over 600 officials on site, but it seems as though all 132 people have lost their lives. Officials are stating that the plane has basically disintegrated. Sean, from what I understand, it dropped from 29,000 feet to 9,000 feet in a matter of minutes, and within a matter of 20 seconds from 9,000 feet to 3,000 feet. So what experts are now claiming is that it actually had a vertical descent before crash landing.
Yeah.
Rather sad news again. Just somebody give me some good news one of these days, please.
That's one of the things. As much as we have first a global pandemic and now a war in Europe, the rest of the world, things still keep going on and other tragedies are still going to happen, which just adds to the strain and the burden of what, we're going to go through and I would say this is a global society now. We are slowly becoming less and less able to divest ourselves from what goes on from the rest of the world. But unfortunately, the negatives will always spill over to everyone else.
And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of Talking Point this morning. Thank you very much to our callers for joining us and making their contribution. Tomorrow morning, hopefully, we'll have Alderman Daniel Piper with us on the program. But for now, I'm Keaton Shaw, very happy to be back. And Mr. Sean Michael Small, you held on well, man. You did excellent. And I'm glad to be back here. Yin and yang, as they say.
When I said stay home, I didn't mean for you to stay home for 4 days.
Listen, you often complain that I don't listen to you, so I thought, hey, listen, let me take
Yeah, but I stopped stay home. Now it's don't be complacent. People,
you see,
please.
Sean, I'm taking a lesson out of my leaders. I'm being reactive. Forgive me. Anyway, folks, that's
you follow those jokers? Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Maybe I did.
If Sean is not with us tomorrow, you understand why. Anyway, folks, that's it.
I don't understand why.
This has been Talking Points here on WESN.
What kind of joke is that to me?
We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.